Hi, Wild Hearthstone YouTube. Keith here. Do you like cool decks? Well, boy, do I have some cool decks for you. Recently, on stream, I played a game we like to call Jank Deck Survivor. The rules are simple. I asked Twitch chat to give me decks to climb with to Legend. I played each deck on rotation or at random until it got to 2 losses. After a deck's second loss, it was eliminated. Last deck standing wins. Now the catch? None of the decks could be on the tier list. That's right. We aren't messing around with any odd questline hunters or pirate warriors or even locks or any popular top tier nonsense. Only the finest, highest quality artisanal deck lists here. So, for reference, the most recent Tempo Storm Wild Meta snapshot for this event had 22 decks. So those are the archetypes that were excluded. I also rejected duplicate archetypes, so no deck could be on the list of decks to play twice. Altogether, chat submitted 57 unique decks to climb with. Now that's an insane amount of variety. It ended up taking about 8 days to play through all the decks on stream. Now, to be fair, many of these decks were basically hot garbage memes. There were a lot of decks that were eliminated quickly, went 0-2 or 1-2 and some 2-2s. One of the decks was so bad that I only played it once and then I banned the guy that gave it to me. But as we played through the decks and all the trash fire was weeded out, we found some real gems that actually had some insane win rates. So let's go over the best of those decks, the top 10 decks from the Jank Deck Survivor Challenge. Now, keep in mind, these are definitely not the perfect or refined builds of anything. And we did high roll a bit, so if you copy these decks, your mileage may vary. Codes are all in the description, so yeah, have fun with that. Also, I didn't make any of these decks, so if you recognize them and you know where they came from, let me know in the comments. Anyway, let's get started. First up, number 10 is Anyfin Paladin, going 6-2, 75% win rate. This was one of the first decks that was submitted, and it survived for almost the whole event. I was blown away by how effective the old Prismatic Lens and Tip the Scales combo seemed to be in this meta. Most decks don't go above 30 health, so it's not hard to scam Warlocks and Hunters with the Murloc OTK. Next up, number 9 is a deck I like to call Cubeless Warlock, going 6-2, 75% win rate. It's the classic Void Caller plus Skull of the Minari shenanigans that we've had around for years with some modern tools thrown in. If you land an early Void Lord or Enhanced Dreadlord, it's obviously very good against aggro, but it also stands up to Hunter well thanks to all the healing, and it can dance around Warlocks, specifically Evenlocks with Hysteria and Plague of Flames. N'Zoth and Blood Reaver Gul'dan are still as strong as ever too, as late game bombs. Deck's not too good against combo, and I don't think Bad Luck Albatross is particularly strong in this meta, so it still has some room for improvement, but otherwise, solid deck. Next, number 8, Evolve Shaman. Yet another 6-2, 75% win rate deck. Now, I was told this deck is a deck from Corbett, but then Corbett said something on Twitter that suggested maybe it wasn't one of his, so if you know where it came from, let me know in the comments. This deck turned out to be really strong early. It took a couple of losses late, which was really a shame. It's a really sweet deck. You can build big boards out of nowhere with all the Evolve and Knuckles combos, and sometimes they just can't deal with all the things. Deck has some other sick combos too, like you can Spirit of the Frog to help chain Evolve effects together. Nullshire Gnome plus Mutate makes an 8-8 that kills things. And you have the good old Flurgle Toxfin Ice Fishing combo that you can actually fetch with Spirit of the Frog. Board Pillager and Shudderwock, they're kind of slow, but other than that, it's a really sweet deck. Next up, number 7, Scimitar Rogue, going 5-2, 71% win rate. Good old dumb glass cannon face aggro. The plan's pretty simple. Make a big weapon, hit him as hard as you can. You have Hooked Scimitar, which is like a front-loaded Kingsbane. And there's so much over-the-top burn in the deck that you usually have enough gas to get there unless they have a lot of taunts or a lot of healing. It's a deck you've seen before, but it's still not too bad in this meta. Next up, number 6, a deck I like to call Big Priest. This one went 7-2, 78% win rate, which kind of tells me that in a different world, Elwyn Boar could actually be a real thing. The deck does a lot of stalling until it gets to 7 pigs, and it wants to trigger the death rattle on the 7th pig on its own turn to swing with Sword of Thousand Truths before the opponent can do anything about it. So you want to save the Spirit Lash for that. With Hysteria, Mass Hysteria, and Psychic Scream, you can shut Warlocks out for a very long time. The deck's not that great against Hunter, though, unless you can make the sword really quickly. Next, number 5, Mech Handbuff Paladin. Now, this one was a late edition, and we only played 6 games with it, going 4-2, 67% win rate. The deck has HS replay data, and I'd never seen it before. Is it another streamer's deck? You recognize it? Let me know in the comments. It's really old school, and Alliance Bannerman goes pretty well with all the other old buffs, so you can make some big mechs pretty fairly quickly. Since the deck has double Rebuke and Loatheb, when you build your big threats, you can lock out your opponents and seal the deal, especially if they're mages or hunters. Most of the deck's top end is kind of suspicious, though. You can probably refine the deck by cutting cards like Cornelius Rome for cards like War Gear or Divine Favor. But even as is, it's a pretty cool throwback, and it held its own surprisingly well. For number 4, we have Reno Shudderwock Shaman, which went 9-2 with an 82% win rate. It's the highest win rate in Survivor besides the winner of the challenge. Now, you might look at this one and be like, hey Keith, what gives? This is a deck on the tier list. When I saw this one, I almost rejected it outright, because we do indeed have Reno Shaman as a tier 4 deck on the Tempo report. However, the deck featured on Tempo is really different from the one we have here. This one has a traditional Shudderwock combo with Serenite Chain Gang and Grumble, and can go infinite with Shudderwock. The Reno Shaman on Tempo doesn't go infinite, it just uses Shudderwock as a late game bomb alongside stuff like N'Zoth the Corruptor. It's a pretty big difference, and they play like completely different decks after a certain point. This deck has really strong defenses, and it does very well against Warlock specifically. A lot of the cards seem underwhelming on their own, but they're surprisingly solid. You can fit them together to kind of like a puzzle to make some really creative, strong plays. It's a lot of fun to play, and it's probably the most viable of all these decks in general. It's my top recommendation of all these decks. If you net deck any of them, net deck this one. Now, we're on to the final 3, and these decks, well, I didn't think any of them would get this far. I'll be upfront with you. These decks are some serious jank, and I felt like I needed a high roll to even get 1 or 2 wins with them, much less 6 or 7 wins I ended up with. They look rough, but you know what they say, you can't judge a book by the bad cards on the cover something. Coming in at number 3, we have Pure Paladin, clocking in 7-2, 78% win rate. It lost once on day 1, then it won 7 games in a row before getting knocked out on the very last day of the challenge. It's really good against aggro, especially other paladins, and it can beat Hunter with some big heals. Lightforged Zealot's actually an MVP. It gives you a 4-mana Pyroblast, basically, that heals for 4. It's really good against Hunter, because it buys time for larger heals, like Libram of Hope or High Exarch Urel. City Tax can also heal too, especially when combined with Libram of Justice or Lord Baroff for a big clear. It ended up getting knocked out by even Warlock, though, so it's probably not that great unless you high roll the big clears, but it's probably not unwinnable. Altogether, relatively solid deck. Now, this next deck up, it's awful. I hate this deck. One of my viewers keeps giving me some version of this all the time when I play viewer decks, and I wish he'd stop giving it to me. Anyway, here it is. The runner-up of Jank Deck Survivor, Pilfered Power Druid. Big PP Druid, coming in with a 75% win rate, going 6-2. Now, the idea with Pilfered Power is you play a bunch of early minions, you go super wide, you play Pilfered Power on curve, and you ramp into something sweet. In practice, it really doesn't work out that way. Either you have an early bum rush that kills your opponent outright and you don't need the ramp, or you draw Pilfered Power after they've already cleared all your minions, or you draw the top end of your deck without the minions or the ramp, and you just get beat up. So how did this very flawed concept actually make it to the finals of this challenge? Looking at this list, if you disregard the Pilfered Powers and the 1 copy of Overflow, the rest of the deck is actually a straightforward aggro druid deck. The 0-mana minions work well with Embiggen, Mark of the Lotus, and Composting, so the deck can make some challenging boards very quickly and rebuild surprisingly well. The natural top end is also pretty sweet. Kazakus Golem Shaper is actually very strong the way the deck's built. Narbarup and Lotheb are obviously very solid cards. If you cut the Pilfer Powers and the Overflow for cards like Power of the Wild or Vibrant Squirrel, you probably have a strong traditional aggro druid build, but then it wouldn't be PP druid. Heaven forbid Twitch chat let me play with decks that aren't sabotaged in some way or another. Okay, final deck. The ultimate winner of Jank Deck Survivor, the last deck standing, we have Big Rogue. Affectionately named Dane Rogue after the originator of Big Rogue himself, it went 7-1 with an 88% win rate in the event. That's insane. You have to get really lucky to win with something like this, but when the deck high rolls, it really high rolls. I called it Dane Rogue, but I'm not sure where it came from, whether it is actually Dane's deck or someone else's, so if you know, let me know in the comments. Anyway, the idea is you use Necreum Blade plus Kobold Illusionist or Necreum Apothecary to get a big death rattle out quickly. The nuts is Silver Vanguard into Plagued Proto-Drake or Kel'Thuzad. If you land Necreum Vial on a Vanguard or a Proto-Drake, it's usually lights out. The deck has some clever combos. You can use SI7 Extortion to trigger your own Illusionists or Vanguards. You can play Necreum Blade or Counterfeit Blade alongside Blade Flurry to clear boards, while also developing yours at the same time. The deck actually shreds Warlocks, and it does pretty well against Warriors too. It's also pretty meta-dependent since it's really poor against Hunter and Mage. Not only do you have to high roll your outcome in the game, but you also have to high roll your matchups too. What can I say? The deck is basically peak wild. High power, high variance. That's what the format's all about, really. The Jank Deck Survivor event was a lot of fun, and it really showcases the wide variety the Wild has to offer. I believe that building cool decks and finding success off the beaten path is one of the best parts of Hearthstone. So don't let some tier lists tell you what you can and can't play. Get out there and do something cool. And if you like this video and you want to see more like it, well, the channel is brand new, so you know what to do. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, share it with your friends, and join in the fun at twitch.tv/Keith_numbers, where you can submit decks for me to play live on stream. Good luck, have fun, and thanks for watching.